Stop Jalen Walker for an alleged traffic violation. Police say he led them on a car chase, fired a shot at them, and eventually abandoned his car to flee on foot while wearing a ski mask. That's when a confrontation ensued. Police opened fire, shooting Walker multiple times. Officers later discovered Walker had left his gun in the car and he was unarmed when he was shot.
What was going to be a routine traffic stop, which would probably result either in a warning or a citation being issued, turned into a pursuit. As Mr. Walker turned onto the entrance ramp to Route 8 and the shot is fired, that changes the nature of the contact. 40 seconds after the initiation of the traffic stop, a half a mile from the location of the traffic stop, you hear the gunshot and then everything else that I've just discovered. And again, that changes the whole nature of the traffic stop. It went from being a routine traffic stop to now a public safety issue.
And with me now is retired LAPD Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. She's also the author of Black and Blue, Creation of a Social Advocate. Cheryl, great to see you. Thanks for being with us again. Also with us is former NYPD Detective Andy Bershad. And Andy, let's go to you first. Thanks for being with us. Also, what was your reaction to this video, this police body cam video when you first saw it?
Well, thank you for having me. Well, obviously it's always hard to watch. It's always hard to watch when a job is unwinding like that. There's obviously an investigation going on. It seems there are a lot of factors, obviously, that potentially led up to him. For why it got to that point, I'm not quite sure, but that's obviously for the investigation to do. Anytime we revisit a scene afterwards on camera, it can always seem horrific.
Sure. And Cheryl, the chief there pointing out that what began as a vehicle pursuit following a traffic stop became a public safety issue when the officers say they saw a gun discharged. Can you explain how that would change how the officers responded?
Well, the officers are certainly going to get amped up. Their adrenaline is going to be running, and they're going to respond as though this threat may very well be ongoing. And listen, because, you know, a suspect that we're pursuing may have a gun and drop it doesn't necessarily mean that officers are expected to lower their expectation of who it is that they're going to confront. Suspects oftentimes carry more than one weapon. And so all of this is going to play into how this investigation is adjudicated administratively by the police chief, and understand he has great autonomy. There are levels of discipline that he can met out to his officers, from a warning to training, retraining, and also termination would be the very end of that spectrum. And so all of this is going to play into that, what we are now learning about Mr. Walker's behavior before, during, and after the shooting.
And I want to play this video again. This was just coming out in the last hour or so from the police department there in Akron. I want to show this for viewers just joining us. Let's watch this video again. Police body cam video. Take a look.
21 shots fired. That vehicle just had a shot come out against the door.
And Andy, we're listening to that barrage of bullets there at the end that hit Walker some 60 times was the report that we had earlier. That's a lot of bullets. That's a lot of shooting. Is that part of police training, to shoot at a suspect that many times?
Well, we train in the police to shoot until the threat is stopped. From my perspective, from just seeing the video recently as well, there was a fair amount of officers there. So to break down the rounds per officer, not to involve in the investigation, that's not uncommon. All the officers, we can't measure their level of fear or to what they were engaging. It was in the understanding that potentially the the victim still had a weapon or had other weapons, like the chief explained before. I've been involved in shootings where there's a high rate of rounds fired just from the mere number of uniformed officers that respond to the situation.
And Cheryl, we also heard the police chief saying that he wants every officer to be held accountable for every shot that they fired. What's your take on the number of times that he was shot?
Well, I mean, it sounds bad. It looks bad. You know, here on the Los Angeles Police Department, we're taught and trained to fire 2 rounds in rapid succession and then assess whether or not a threat exists. I mean, you don't just fire to barrel meltdown because you think there's a threat. You need to be able to know for sure, when you let rounds go, that the threat even still exists. And so I don't think it would be unreasonable to question an officer who may have a magazine that holds 15 rounds and have them articulate with some specificity what was the threat level at round 7, 8, 14, and 15.
Mm-hmm. And I want to stay with us for just a second. I want to go to CNN correspondent Polo Sandoval, who's there on the ground in Akron. Polo, I know you were there for the press conference that just happened in the last couple of hours where the police chief spoke. We heard from the family attorney as well. Walk us through what you learned this afternoon.
One of the biggest questions we've had since the shooting, Jessica, was this perceived threat that Akron police officers said was the reason why so many officers fired so many times. Today we heard from the police chief that during the vehicle pursuit of the incident on Sunday night, they believe that Jayland Walker fired at least 1 shot from inside that vehicle. Now, you can see muzzle flash from an Ohio Department of Transportation traffic camera that's seen from the driver's side of the vehicle. In addition to that, the body camera that I believe we just played, and we may play again if I'm not mistaken, you can also hear what sounds like that single gunshot before that vehicle pursuit eventually turns into a foot pursuit, and that is when, about several minutes into this incident, that's when Walker is believed to have jumped out of that moving vehicle, and then seconds later is when officers, about 8 of them, according to investigators, opened fire. And as we have prepared to play this video that again may be disturbing for many, is likely disturbing for many, it's important to point out what we heard from the police chief saying that 40 seconds into the attempted traffic stop is when that single gunshot was seen and heard from the vehicle, and that was a game-changing moment, changing things from a traffic stop to what the chief described as a public safety issue that officers needed to address.
21 shots fired. That vehicle just had a shot come out of its door.
So almost immediately after the shooting took place, Jessica, we understand that authorities basically handed this investigation over to state officials, and they are the ones that are essentially, along with the Attorney General's office, working this investigation. One of the key questions that I also asked the police chief today was, what was the most disturbing thing that he saw in that body camera video? And he told me that he specifically will be looking at this perceived threat, that each one of those officers will be held accountable for each one of the rounds that left their service weapons, which again, at this point, we believe that it could be dozens. Preliminary reports suggest that there could have been up to 90 shots fired. And on Walker's body, according to a preliminary autopsy report, there were about 60 wounds identified on his body. But this is an important distinction as we send things back to you, Jessica. It is still too soon to definitively say that he was shot 60 times. The police chief said, what we've also heard from the Walker family and their legal representation, that could have been a mix of both entry and exit wounds, aside from some other injuries. So still a lot of questions to be answered right now, but at least now the public has a few minutes worth of insight into what actually happened after police officers released this body camera video just over 5 days after the incident took place, which is certainly noteworthy.
Yeah, and we do have more information now, and hopefully we can get more information as this investigation continues. Polo Sandoval, thanks so much. Also, my thanks to Cheryl Dorsey and Andy Bershad for joining us as well. And please stay with CNN for updates on this story. We'll continue to keep an eye out for updates as they come. Also coming up this afternoon, Gavin Newsom is running for re-election in California. So why is he running ads in Florida? The TV spot that's sparking a lot of presidential buzz.
With Best